Hi everyone, welcome to my new channel. Shocking betrayal and revenge stories await. Please support me and let's go. My name is Lila Cronin. I'm 36 years old, and last Thanksgiving, in front of my entire extended family, someone called my 11-year-old daughter a charity case. Not quietly, not by accident. They said it loud enough for the whole table to hear, right as the turkey was being carved and everyone had their phones out taking pictures. And they had no idea what I was about to reveal. If you've ever watched your child try to pretend they're not hurt while their eyes fill with tears, you'll understand why I stayed calm that night. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud, it's timed. Thanksgiving at my parents' house has always been a production. My mother believes in matching table settings, embroidered napkins, and centerpieces that look like they belong in a magazine. My older brother Daniel and his wife Marissa always arrive first. They live in the big house across town, the one with the 3-car garage and the perfectly landscaped yard. They have one son, Oliver, who's 12 and already being groomed to run the family legacy, as my father likes to say. Then there's me and my daughter, Claire. Claire is 11. She's thoughtful, observant, and quieter than most kids her age. She notices things, she remembers details, she reads financial articles for fun. I'm not exaggerating, but because we don't live in a big house and because I'm a single mom, my side of the family has always looked at us with a certain kind of pity. It started subtly after my divorce 5 years ago. Comments like, "Are you managing okay?" or "If you ever need help, just ask." On the surface, it sounded supportive. Underneath, it felt like a judgment. Claire heard more than they realized. That Thanksgiving, I knew something was coming. My parents had mentioned they wanted to discuss long-term planning with the family. Whenever my father uses phrases like that, it means money. Dinner was loud, plates clinking, my aunt talking about travel plans, Oliver describing his private math tutor. Claire sat next to me, helping my mother pass dishes, smiling politely when spoken to. Halfway through the meal, my father tapped his glass. The room went quiet. He stood up, napkin folded neatly beside his plate, and cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been reviewing our estate plan," he said. "We believe in rewarding responsibility and ensuring the family name continues strong." I felt Claire shift beside me. My brother straightened up, already smiling. My father continued, "We've decided to establish a substantial investment account for Oliver. We'll be transferring part of the family trust into his name next year." There were approving nods around the table. My mother added, "We want to support the child who's most prepared to carry things forward." Then Marissa laughed lightly and said, "Well, I guess not everyone can be positioned for that. Some of us just need help." I didn't like her tone. And then it happened. My aunt leaned toward Claire and said, in that fake sweet voice some adults use with children, "It's okay, sweetheart. Not everyone's meant to inherit. Some people are more like charity cases, right?" She chuckled, and my brother didn't correct her. I felt Claire freeze. The table went awkwardly quiet for a second, and then someone changed the subject. My father didn't say a word. My mother stared at her plate. Claire stared at hers too. I put my hand over hers under the table and felt her fingers trembling. A charity case. That's what they thought of my daughter. Let me tell you something about Claire. While my family was busy measuring worth by appearances, Claire had been doing something very different. 3 years ago, when she was 8, she started asking questions about money. Not about toys, not about shopping, about investments. She'd overheard my father talking about dividends one afternoon and came home asking what that meant. Most kids forget a word like that in 5 minutes. Claire didn't. I explained it to her in simple terms. She asked more questions. I showed her how compound interest works. We opened a small custodial account with birthday money and whatever I could afford to add. It wasn't huge, it wasn't flashy, but it was consistent. Every month, we sat at the kitchen table and reviewed it together. I taught her how to read basic financial statements. We talked about long-term growth instead of short-term spending. At 9, she decided she didn't want big birthday parties anymore. She wanted contributions to her account instead. At 10, she started a tiny online craft shop selling handmade bookmarks and donated half the profits to her own investment account and half to a local literacy charity, a charity case. That Thanksgiving, while my family was congratulating themselves, they had no idea that Claire's small, steady account had quietly grown far beyond what they imagined. Not because we were rich, because we were disciplined. Back at the table, Claire excused herself to the bathroom. I watched her go, shoulders stiff, chin lifted just enough to keep from crying. That's when I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my glass. I simply said, "Actually, since we're discussing financial futures, I have something to share too." My father looked mildly irritated. "Lila, this isn't really—" "It's exactly the right time," I said calmly. Everyone turned toward me. I pulled out my phone and mirrored the screen to the TV in the living room. My brother had set it up earlier for a football game. It took less than 30 seconds. "What are you doing?" Marissa asked. "Clarifying something," I replied. Claire came back into the room just as the account dashboard appeared on the screen. I didn't show every detail, just the total. The balance was larger than the amount my parents had just announced for Oliver's substantial investment account. The room went silent. My father blinked. "What is that?" "That," I said evenly, "is Claire's custodial investment account, built from her own earnings, contributions, and long-term growth over the last 3 years." My aunt's face drained of color. Marissa laughed nervously. "That can't be real." "It is," I said. "And it's diversified across index funds and municipal bonds. Conservative strategy. Long-term horizon." My brother stared at the screen. Claire looked confused at first. Then her eyes widened as she realized what was happening. I turned toward the table. "You called my daughter a charity case," I said. "But she's been building her own future quietly while everyone else was busy ranking children like trophies." No one spoke. "She doesn't need an inheritance to validate her worth," I continued. "And she certainly doesn't need pity." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We were simply discussing planning." "Planning based on perception," I said. "Not facts." Claire stepped closer to me, standing straighter now. "I'm proud of you," I told her, loud enough for everyone to hear. And here's the part they really didn't expect. I wasn't done. "Since we're being transparent," I added, "Claire also recently qualified for a National Youth Entrepreneurship Grant based on her online business performance. She didn't even tell most of you because she didn't think you'd take her seriously." Marissa's jaw tightened. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft. "We didn't realize—" "That's the problem," I said gently. "You never asked." The rest of dinner was painfully quiet. No one mentioned inheritance again. The football game never got turned on. When Claire and I left that night, she was quiet in the car for a few minutes. Then she said, "Mom, was that wrong? Showing them?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, there's nothing wrong with correcting a false narrative." She nodded slowly. I didn't like when she said that. "I know." A few days later, my father called. He sounded different, less certain. He asked to meet for coffee. He admitted they had underestimated Claire, that they'd assumed because we lived modestly, we were struggling. I told him there's a difference between struggling and strategizing. He asked if we'd consider letting them contribute to Claire's account. I told him that would be up to Claire. Because here's the truth. Revenge doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like preparation, like patience, like letting someone reveal their own bias before you calmly dismantle it with facts. Claire didn't win that night because of money. She won because she learned something powerful. Other people's assumptions don't define you. Since then, things have shifted. My aunt apologized directly to Claire, not in a dramatic way, just quietly. That mattered more. My parents adjusted their estate plan to include both grandchildren equally. I didn't ask them to. I didn't need to. The point had already been made. Claire still runs her little online shop. She still studies market trends for fun, and she still chooses practical sneakers over flashy ones. But she walks into family gatherings differently now, head high, not because she has an account balance, because she knows who she is. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the people who underestimate quiet kids usually end up shocked by them. So, if you've ever been labeled, if your child has ever been dismissed, if someone has ever mistaken humility for weakness, Stay steady, build quietly, and when the moment comes, reveal the truth calmly. I'm Lila Cronin, and that was the Thanksgiving they'll never forget.